Lotus isn't exactly a household name unless you have a household full of car enthusiasts, but buying something with this badge in the past has always meant making big sacrifices in terms of daily drivability and comfort in order to get that extra something, that extra handling, that extra feel that Lotus gives for the drivers. But they got a big cash infusion recently from a Chinese company called Geely, and they've set out to make their last internal combustion engine car here, the Emira, something that you can actually daily drive. So let's go ahead and take a look at this thing from the inside out and talk about what it is like to drive. Of course, the engine is in the back here under the trunk. This is a mid-engine car, rear mid, if we're gonna get technical here. It's got the Camry V6, a Toyota V6. You want to tell your spouse, I'm getting the new Camry body style, and then you show up with this. That's the move. But this thing has a supercharged V6. It makes 400 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque if you have the manual, 317 pound-feet of torque if you have the 6-speed auto. There's also another engine option. There is an inline 4, and it's an AMG engine, which will come exclusively with an 8-speed dual clutch automatic. But this one here has the V6 with the supercharger and the third pedal. This car has an absolutely gorgeous profile, and I love when form follows function, and that is exactly how this thing was designed. They did take a lot of cues from the Avaya, the electric hypercar that they're making, but this is just all about cooling and downforce and grip and just getting the best handling possible. I absolutely love the design of this thing. We're looking at about 173 inches overall, which is just slightly shorter than a Cayman. 101-inch wheelbase, which is quite a bit longer than a Cayman's wheelbase. I mentioned the Cayman because that's really the direct competitor here. So a Cayman's going to be about 97 inches on the wheelbase. This one is quite a bit longer at 101. These mirrors here do have integrated turn signals. They will power fold. There's no blind spot or anything like that, but they will power fold, and they are nice and wide and actually provide really good visibility. We have this wonderful contour through here with the big venting on the side here to help cool down that engine, because of course the engine is in the middle, the rear mid here. Absolutely love that. These big wheels are the 20s here. It only comes on 20s, but you can get these in this silver or you can get them in black. And those are either going to be on Goodyear Eagle F1s or Michelin Cup 2s. You know, the Cup 2s are really, if you are going to track this thing, these are perfectly fine for the daily drive. If you're not going to track it, you don't need quite that much tire. This one is also on the touring suspension. We'll talk a little bit more about that during the drive, as well as the grip here. But just love the profile of this car. For the front end, love the look of this thing. Once again, it's just absolutely beautiful up here at the Lotus badge, of course, with Colin Chapman's initials in there. More cooling, got more parking sensors. Again, not something I really expected, but pretty cool that it has those parking sensors here. Nice little touch there, but lots of venting all across here. And there is no frunk in this one, so you cannot open this up, but all the air will come in through here and push up out through these vents up here and actually help with that downforce. Once again, this thing is all about downforce. And we got the nice big LED lights through here as well. I love this contour through here. You can kind of see the haunches in the back. Just absolutely love the look of this thing. The back end here, very recognizable as a Lotus, really matches the design language of some of their other cars here. And we've got this sort of little lip going on, but there's no active arrow there. You're not going to get a wing popping up when you get to 70 miles an hour or anything like that. Lotus has said that that is not necessary. The shape of the car is designed for maximum downforce. As you go faster, you will get more downforce naturally. You don't need that wing popping up. At the LED lights, we got a bunch of venting through here, a bunch of venting down in here. This is all about cooling and downforce. We got the nice big exhaust tips. You'll get a little bit of pops and bangs going on. As you drive this thing hard in sport mode or track mode especially, get a little bit more pops and bangs in those modes. We've even got parking sensors back here. Of course, the engine is back here instead of up in the front. It is a mid-engine car, so the car will sort of rotate around you. We'll talk about that a little bit more during the drive. It does pop open here with this gloss black colored key. I wish the key were a little bit nicer, but it does have for the drivers on the side. Love that little touch there. You can apparently fit a golf bag back here. It's not a ton of space. I'm a little skeptical about even fitting that, but you can get a duffel bag or something. Just make sure that it's not something that's gonna have a problem if it gets warm, because the engine is right here and anything in here is gonna get quite warm. Right, on the interior here, if you've ever tried to get in, or more importantly out of an Exige or an Elise, then you know that just that right now is already way more livable than either of those cars. The Evora is easier to get in and out of than those other two cars, but this one is even easier. It's actually very, very easy to get in and out of. Nice big ingress, egress here. And the interior, generally speaking, is a very nice place to be. Is it like $100,000 nice? That could be argued here, but most of the money here really went to the driving experience, and it still feels very nice. It doesn't feel cheap or anything like that. Got all the leather surfaces, the Napa leather seats. These are offered in a few different colors. There's also an Alcantara seat, but these are 12-way power adjustable. We got memory settings. They've got lumbar support. I do wish the bolsters were a little bit tighter, but there's not really a lot you can do to, make the bolsters fit for everyone unless you make them power adjustable. That would be nice to see. You even got cup holders in here and a little bit of extra storage space. The shifter here is in the perfect spot. We got exposed shift linkage down there. Love, love, love to see that. We got the engine back there. You can see through the little window with the actuator going when you hit the throttle. Absolutely love to see that little touch as well. They really made this focused on the driver, but also did give you a really nice place to be here. Square steering wheel also helps with getting in and out. Not exactly square, but square-ish. Very comfortable, very good grip on this thing. Nice girth to it. Does have these sort of haptic buttons on here, which I don't love, but I haven't really hit those accidentally. You can also press them, but they are haptic as well. A little bit of information in the gauge cluster. It would be nice to see analog gauges. I'm a little bit surprised that this doesn't have analog gauges, just because this is like such a focused driver's car, but it's nice having that information in there. It is laid out pretty well here, and then it's got the tack going across the top. Again, I do wish the tack were like more circular, but it's just more of a personal preference here. The infotainment screen here I wish was tilted towards me, but I think that's probably part of like the right-hand drive, left-hand drive thing. It's just a little bit easier. Just make it sort of right in the middle. But when I'm using it for directions, you do have to kind of take your eyes pretty far off the road. But it has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, both wireless through here. There's some performance monitoring in here as well. Vehicle statistics, things like that. Some of your HVAC. You also have HVAC controls down here with the little race car guy. Love to see that. That's just a nice little touch. Knobs for the HVAC as well. A little Volvo knob for your volume. Your drive mode is a switch down here. It is 2 clicks. A little bit strange. You do have to hit it, and then you have to either hit it again in the direction you want when the screen comes up, or you can click the exact mode that you want. That's also how you get to your traction control. If you go into track mode, then your traction control will go off automatically, but otherwise you have to hit this switch and then hit traction control. That seems like that should have been a button. It was a little bit more easily accessible. I do wish it had a manual handbrake. It does have an electronic handbrake over here on the side, but it makes space for cup holders, I guess, and it is a little bit easier because you don't have to think about it. When you get in, you just start driving, it'll turn off on its own. If you turn the car off, you go to get out, it'll turn on its own. You don't even have to set it, and you don't really even have to think about it. We do have the KEF sound system. I guess this is a big British, is a popular one with British manufacturers. Good. It's a very good sound system. It sounds clear. I do like it, but I feel like it's a little bit wasted on a car like this, just because it does have that engine right there and it is pretty loud. You can't really hear the music super clearly anyway. unless you really crank it up. So really what it has is a 6-cylinder sound system with a supercharger back there. But generally speaking here, you know, the interior is nice. This is easy to live with in here for sure. Driving this thing, we'll talk about daily livability and we'll talk about spirited driving. Of course, we gotta talk about everything here. The spirited driving first, because of course that is what this is for. You can feel everything in the road. Doesn't matter what mode you're in, you can feel every single thing in the road. If somebody threw a gum wrapper in the road and you ran over it, I feel like you would probably feel that. And that's through your butt and through the steering here. Because we do have hydraulic steering. It's one of the few cars here that still has hydraulic steering. And between that and the suspension and just this ridiculous engineering, you can just feel every single thing. With it being mid-engine, it rotates around you. So you are essentially the center of this car, and it's your inner hip here. So anything you do, you just feel so confident, you know, between the steering and the suspension, the center of gravity and the position of the engine, where everything just lines up, and the downforce, you go faster and it grips harder, and you are never worried about losing grip. And it just does exactly what it's told, and you feel it all happening. That's really where this differs from the Cayman. The Cayman will do exactly what it's told, but you don't feel it all. It's surgical. It's great. It's excellent. You don't quite have the same connection that you get with this car. And that's something that you can't tell from a spec sheet. That's something you really have to drive one of these cars to feel that difference. The shifter here, maybe it's not as tight and as buttoned up as something like the Caymans, but it's still great to shift. Nice short shift, placed perfectly here in the cabin, nice and easy to shift. And the gearing is great for spirited drives and for daily driving. That's one thing, again, with the Cayman, the gears are so long, like you can go 85 in second gear or something like that. The last time I drove a Cayman, I found myself like I was having a conversation or something, and I would shift just because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I've been in this gear for a long time. I've got to be getting up here in the tack. This feels like I should have been shifting by now. And then I'll realize, oh, I shouldn't have shifted because, you know, the gears are just so long. And this one first is a little bit longer than I'm used to. Like I was stuck in traffic yesterday because I'm in LA and there's just traffic everywhere. I would find myself downshifting back into first, which is something I wouldn't typically do in most cars. I'd be like going 5-6 miles an hour and just downshift back into first. You can actually row through gears here. I'm on this like tight, windy mountain road and I can actually get through. I've gotten up through first through third here. So you do actually get to row the gears, and it makes the manual a little bit more appealing here. If you're going to buy a manual with such long gearing, you don't actually get to shift it, and you kind of lose out on so much of the experience. Now, I do wish it sounded a little bit nicer. That I was a little bit surprised. No, it doesn't. At first I was like, is there a back window open or something? Like, what's going on? Because it doesn't sound quite as nice as I expected. This is the same engine carried over from the Evora, so if you've been in that, then you'll know what this sounds like. It's also in the Exige, I believe. I wish it sounded a little bit better, but V6s are pretty hit or miss here. And the supercharged whine, you do get a little bit of it when you get up into the tack, but you don't get that same sort of whine that you get with like a muscle car, like you get with like a Hellcat or like a GT500 or something like that. But you do get a little bit of that whine. We do get a little bit of pops and bangs here going through these corners. So It's fun. It's just not the best sounding engine. The visibility all around is really, really very good. That was something that really surprised me. Like, I can see everything coming around this corner. I am not concerned that something's gonna like pop up at me in any kind of blind spot here. Nice big open front window, nice wide mirrors, even when I'm like on the highway and stuff. Like these mirrors are so wide, you can really just see everybody coming. The back window, it's small. I mean, it's still a sports car, but you can actually see decently well out of it. So overall visibility is really very good for a sports car, and really just in general is actually very good. Feeling everything in the road is both a blessing and a curse, and this is where that for the drivers thing really kind of shows itself, because you are giving up a little bit there, quite a bit there, in terms of daily comfort. And when I'm coming through these corners, the pedal box is so nice and tight. If you want to heel toe, go for it. It's super easy. But if your feet are on the bigger side, you are going to have to watch out a little bit, because the pedal box is so tight. There have been a couple of times when I hit the brake and my foot brushed the gas pedal. And I don't have huge feet. I'm wearing like 11s, 10 and a half 11s. So I don't have the biggest feet in the world here. And the pedal box is just very, very tight. So that is something to watch out for. It is shifted to the right a little bit. So that is one thing, actually, when I first got into the car, the position of the pedal box and just how tight it is, it took me a second. I was like, where's the third pedal? Like, this car is missing a pedal. And I looked over at the shifter and I was like, no, it has to have a third pedal. Like, this is a manual. So that did take a second, and finding my position, finding a comfortable seating position did take a little bit of time. So especially like if you're someone that maybe you can't drive it, but you're going to look at one and sit in one, and it feels a little bit awkward at first. It did feel kind of weird for me. I only mentioned this because actually I had a friend sit in it as well, and he was like, I just can't get comfortable. Like, I can't get to a position where, I can drive comfortably and reach the pedals. But you do kind of fall into that position. You will find that. So just sort of a weird note, but something that I thought was worth mentioning. In terms of the daily driving here, so the fact that you can feel everything is both a blessing and a curse here. This is really where the for the drivers thing really shows itself here, because if you're not at least a little bit hardcore in terms of driving, you're going to get uncomfortable. It is not a soft ride. It is not an easy ride. You'll feel everything in the road. As I mentioned before, it has not been super comfortable on these LA roads here. And the traffic, if you're dealing with traffic, the clutch pedal is a little on the heavy side, which I love for these spirited drives. But in traffic, it is a bit of a pain. This car was not built to sit in traffic. This car was built for mountain roads like this. Now, this car is getting on the quote-unquote heavier side. It does have an extruded aluminum chassis, automotive adhesives and stuff to keep that weight down. For a Lotus, it's on the heavier side. It's about 3,200 pounds, but that is going to put it on par with the Cayman in terms of weight, and it just handles itself so well. It doesn't feel heavy. You can feel some of the weight in the corners when it's pulling a little bit of roll, just a little bit of weight, but for the most part, it hides that. It's just so nimble. I am so glad cars like this exist. Now, you are hyper aware driving this car of how low it is. And I'm not just talking about scraping. You do have to worry about scraping on big driveways and things. But when you're on the highway and you're looking up at a Nissan Versa and thinking that thing can probably crush me, it is something to be aware of. And it's not a comfortable feeling. It is something you do have to consider. Again, a sacrifice to be made for the driving experience. It just pulls. At the end of the day here, we have a car that is absolutely a driver's car. Form follows function, and that function is grip, downforce, handling, and engagement. Absolutely a joy to drive, especially on these twisty mountain roads. Now, Lotus set out to make this car more livable than any of their previous cars, something with a little bit more mass appeal here for the daily drivability. And it is certainly better in terms of that than any of the previous Loti. But if you are really truly gonna daily drive this car, then you still do lose out to something like a Cayman. A Cayman is gonna be a lot softer and a lot easier to live with. But there is that bit of sterility with the Cayman. You don't get the same kind of feel, the same kind of connection with the car and with the road that you get with this. So there is definitely a bit of a trade-off there. As always, thank you for watching. This has been a very special experience for me. Make sure to like, hit share, hit all the YouTube buttons down below. Let me know if I missed something. Let me know if you have a comment, and hopefully I will see you next time.